Let us be honest for a moment, painfully honest. By all outward appearances, this thing we call life is merely a flicker, a brief spark of light between two endless nights, and not even a peaceful day between them. For the more we allow ourselves to feel pleasure, the more open we are to pain. The more light we draw in, the darker the shadow that follows. And it is always there just behind the laughter, the triumph, the so-called joy. We have tried, through centuries of effort and imagination, to make sense of this, to give meaning to a flickering existence that ends in silence. And the only way we seem able to do this is by insisting there must be something more, some deeper layer, some grander plan behind the outward spectacle. Heaven, salvation, rebirth, destiny, call it what you will. We crave security not merely in this life, but beyond it. Because to accept the rawness of what is that life, comes and goes, without fixed reason, without guarantee, is a terrifying prospect. Now, I may not be forgiven for introducing such grave matters with a childish image, but the whole affair reminds me of something I tried to do when I was a boy. I wanted to send someone a parcel of water, not a bottle. I wished to tie up the water itself with paper and string. And of course, every time I tried, the result was a soggy mess. The water escaped, just as life slips through our fingers when we try to contain it. You see, human beings are rather brilliant at tying packages. We have built systems of belief, politics, morality, and metaphysics, carefully wrapped bundles of meaning, each attempting to hold the unholdable, name the unnameable. But no matter how clever the method, the package falls apart. The water bursts free. And the more our knowledge has grown, the more history we accumulate, the more facts we collect, the more aware we become, the more fragile these packages appear. They cannot contain the complexity. They cannot hold the flow. And so the modern mind finds itself in a peculiar state, flooded with information, but starving for meaning. We live in an age of extraordinary insecurity, not because the world is more dangerous than before, but because the anchors we use to cling to have unraveled. Traditions, religions, social roles, eternal truths, all questioned, all cast into doubt. Some celebrate this as a liberation. Others, understandably, find it disorienting, even terrifying. And most people live somewhere between the two, briefly exhilarated by freedom, then quietly overtaken by dread. For if nothing is fixed, if life is truly just change, just flow, just this present, then what becomes of hope? Hope, you see, is always aimed at the future. A better job, a longer life, a heaven after death. But if the future is as fluid as water, if there is no promised land awaiting us, what then? It seems, quite frankly, hopeless. And yet, we still chase. We chase happiness not in the present, but in the promise of what is to come. We say, just around the corner, then I'll be fulfilled. After this crisis passes, once I've found my purpose, when I retire, when I die. But the future, like the water in my childhood parcel, never quite arrives. And even when it seems to when the long-awaited day finally comes, we find it cannot be enjoyed unless it too carries a promise of another future beyond it. It's a cruel trick of the mind. To seek happiness in the future is to forever chase a mirage, a will-o'-the-wisp that disappears the moment you reach for it. And then in the end you vanish too. But understand this insecurity, this uncertainty, is not new. There has never been a time in human history where security was more than temporary, more than an illusion. Even in what we call the good old days, life was fragile. Death, disease, and disaster did not wait politely at the margins. What made life bearable then, however, was not certainty, but belief. Belief in God, in the soul, in eternal justice, things untouched by the calamities of the world. And while these beliefs may not have made life less precarious, they gave it shape. They gave it meaning. But now today, such convictions are harder to find. Even in churches and temples, even among the devout, there lingers doubt. Science has not only replaced religion in authority, it has stripped from us the comfort of myth. The scientist does not pretend to know what cannot be known, and in doing so reveals the vast, indifferent mystery of the cosmos. This honesty, admirable though it is, leaves the human heart famished. Because while the mind is satisfied with logic, the soul yearns for more. It wants purpose, direction, assurance that all of this matters. And when those assurances collapse, we look elsewhere. Political movements become our myths, social crusades become our meaning. We join collective efforts, not always because they are just, but because they give us a sense of being part of something larger, a sense that we are not alone in the dark. But you can feel it, can't you? The trembling underneath. For these are not certainties, but shouts in the night. And the louder we shout, the more fragile we reveal ourselves to be. So what happens to a mind, to a being, that can no longer believe? Not in fairy tales, but in any foundation at all. What becomes of the heart when all the old myths crumble and the new ones ring hollow? It begins to grasp. We turn inward, hoping to find permanence in ourselves, in our identities, our careers, our knowledge. We say, at least I am this, or at least I know that. But the truth, if you look just a little too long in the mirror, is that you are changing constantly, quietly, without your permission. The face, the thoughts, the tastes, the hopes, none of them stay. And so you clutch, you plan, you try to prepare, to fortify. You attempt, as all modern people do, to organize your life into a blueprint of safety. You build routines, set goals, make lists, meditate, track your calories, forecast your income, visualize success. You try, in every imaginable way, to manage the future. But no matter how precise the effort, the outcome never feels secure. Something always slips out of view. Some variable, some person, some emotion, some event ruins the equation, and you are back where you started, uncertain. And then here lies the rub. You blame yourself. You say, if only I had tried harder, planned better, prayed deeper, been more focused. But the real problem is not your failure. The problem is the game itself, because you are chasing control in a world that is uncontrollable. You are searching for security in a realm that is defined by change. It is, as we said before, like trying to tie up water in a paper parcel. You get wet, you fail, you try again. And in that trying, in that reaching for a future that never arrives, you create your own suffering. Here is the paradox. The desire for security is the very thing that makes you feel insecure. The more you want to feel safe, the more you notice how unsafe things really are. The more tightly you grip the rope, the more your hands burn. In the act of resisting uncertainty, you become obsessed with it. And what you resist, you magnify. Fear breeds fear. Worry breeds more worry. To want safety, absolute permanent safety, is to fight against the very nature of existence. Because the universe, you see, is not fixed. It dances, it flows. It erupts and collapses, sings and silences, all in rhythm without asking your permission. And so, when you demand that it pause for your comfort, you suffer. Because life will not hold still. It will not meet you in the future. It is already here. The mistake is in thinking you can stand apart from it, manage it, direct it from some imagined place of separateness. But you are not outside of life. You are not the observer looking in. You are in it. You are it. Just as a wave is not something separate from the ocean. It is the ocean momentarily expressing itself as a wave, so you are not separate from the universe, but the universe momentarily expressing itself as you. And the moment you see this, the need for security begins to dissolve. Because what could be more secure than this very moment, the only one that ever truly exists? So then, what is one to do? If life offers no final foothold, if beliefs fade, if plans crumble, if even the self turns to smoke under scrutiny, where does one stand? And the answer, though simple, is not easy. You stop standing. You stop seeking a ground. And you fall freely, openly, into the present. Not because the present moment is safe, but because it's the only thing that's real. You see, we have confused the idea of freedom with the power to control. We think we are free when we have mastery over the future, when we've eliminated risk, when the path is clear and marked. But that isn't freedom at all. That is fear wearing the mask of progress. Real freedom is far more wild. It's the surrender to the rhythm of life, to change, to death, to rebirth, not as things to overcome, but as the very texture of existence. Because in truth, you were never in control. There was never a separate you behind the eyes, managing the world like a ship from its helm. There is only awareness, witnessing, dancing, being. But as long as you try to cling to certainty, to permanence, to me, you will suffer. You suffer not because life is cruel, but because you want it to be something it is not. You want it to be solid, predictable, safe, and life, thank God, is none of those things. The very beauty of it all is in its impermanence. A cherry blossom is not less beautiful because it falls. The sun is no less radiant because it sets. So why do you imagine you must remain? Why do you fight to freeze the flowing water? The wisdom of insecurity is not some clever philosophy. It is a way of seeing, a return. It is the recognition that the moment you stop trying to secure your life is the moment it becomes alive. That in letting go of your need for answers, you begin to feel the mystery again. You were never meant to have it all figured out. The point was never to capture life, but to feel it. To live it as music, not as math. As dance, not direction. So, when you stop resisting change, when you no longer brace against the current, you find that the river was carrying you all along. You are not lost. You are not late. You are simply here. And here is enough. Now, perhaps the greatest illusion of all the root from which all this anxiety springs is the idea that you are separate from life, that you are a skin-encapsulated ego, tossed into a world not of your choosing, doing your best to survive, and hopefully to succeed. But who told you that? Where did you get this idea that there is a little you inside your head, pulling the levers and thinking the thoughts, directing the action like some spiritual CEO? You were taught it. You were told from the very beginning, you are you, and everything else is other. And so you've spent your life defending that boundary. But consider this, can there be a front without a back? Can you have a coin with only one side? You are not a stranger here. You are the universe, expressing itself briefly as a person. Just as a wave is not separate from the sea, you are not separate from the whole. The air you breathe, the thoughts you think, the heartbeat in your chest, these are not possessions, they are processes. Movements, the world happening through you. You don't beat your heart, you don't grow your hair, and you certainly don't choose your thoughts. They arise as clouds form and drift and dissolve. So when you let go of the idea of being someone in charge, what's left is not chaos but peace. The fear of death begins to dissolve because you see, there was never a fixed you to lose in the first place. So then how does one live, knowing that all things pass? You live as the tree lives, bending in the wind, rooted not in certainty, but in presence. You do not cling to the leaves, for you know they must fall. You do not beg the river to stop flowing, for its movement is its music. To love life truly is to love its change. To love without owning, to act without anxiety, to hold without grasping. You eat the fruit of the moment, you taste it fully, but you do not try to preserve the peel or frame the seed. This is not a call to apathy or passivity. No, quite the opposite. When you are no longer driven by fear, you begin to live with gentleness and with great power. You laugh more. You cry more easily. You touch the world more softly because you are no longer trying to conquer it. You are it. And so, to live wisely is to live freely. To live freely is to live without clinging. And to live without clinging is to be at last at peace.